Welcome to Bishop Eton on this Thursday afternoon, and once more I have a little message to share with you as we prepare for the bank holiday weekend. And then of course on Tuesday so many of our schools will be returning, and we wish them really well. Today happens to be the feast of St. Monica, and tomorrow of her son, the great St. Augustine of Hippo. And it's funny, even as a little child I have this very vivid memory of one of our old priests, Father Desmond Fitzgerald, preaching the novena devotions in St. Mary's, Clapham. And as a young lad I was there, I can't remember what year it would have been, probably sometime in the late 1950s. And it must have been the feast of St. Monica or St. Augustine on that Saturday. And all I can remember him saying over and over again was, "Dear St. Monica, dear St. Augustine." And it was almost as if they were his friends, which was rather lovely. And he talked about them very affectionately. So even as a young lad, I had this memory of Augustine and his mother, Monica, having this close relationship. And later on, I was to read the wonderful story which we have in the office of the church for the Feast of St. Monica. St. Augustine writing about his mother, and writing about the distress that he and his brother experienced as she was dying. They were in a place called Ostia, which is just on the coast near Rome, and his brother was really desperate that his mother should get back to Africa and die in her homeland. But she had already told them not to worry, just to bury her where she was. But she overheard the conversation, and she looks at St. Augustine, and this is what she says. She says, "See the way he talks." And then she said to us both, "Lay this body wherever it may be. Let no care of it disturb you. This only I ask of you, that you should remember me at the altar of the Lord wherever you may be." And when she had uttered this wish in such words as she could manage, she fell silent as her sickness took hold of her more strongly. It's a very touching scene, isn't it? Very powerful scene. Funnily enough, today would be the anniversary of my father's birthday. He would have been 123 if he'd lived till today. So as I celebrated Mass this morning at St. Mary's, I shared that little story with them at the Mass. And it was a great kind of moment for me just to remember my own father at the altar of God, and my mother, of course, and my family and friends, as I often do, and as I try to remember all those intentions too that you asked me to pray for, and that we continue to place faithfully in the basket here. Even in the last few days, people have drawn my attention to people suffering, having had cancer diagnoses and so on. And I can think of two such people that I've been asked to pray for. So I'd like to pray for Bernadette and for Caroline. But all of you who've asked for prayers, and as you know, we put those prayers for the intentions of those who are suffering into the bulletins each week when they're asked for too. And indeed I copy those and put them beneath the altar so that they're not forgotten. The Lord knows who they are, of course, but it's nice to do these little human things. They make such a difference, I think, and they keep us on our toes. And that makes me reflect too on sometimes it's not the big occasions. We had two lovely occasions here, as you know. Earlier in the week I told you that Brother Michael Taylor was going to make his final vows as a Redemptorist, which he did on Monday evening with Father Provincial, and then Bishop Ralph came over, and on Tuesday he was ordained a deacon. And they were lovely occasions, a little bit less full of ceremony than we would have had if it hadn't been for the pandemic, but they went well. And we did have a cantor singing beautifully, Danielle, and the organist and so on, and a nice reception on Tuesday afternoon. So everything went well. But I often think sometimes it's those incidental moments, those meetings, maybe just a cup of coffee with somebody, which can inspire us, change our mood. Let me just give you an example from this morning. This morning I had to have a blood test. I get these blood tests every 6 months just to see that things are okay. So I went over to the hospital and I got the blood test, and this lovely nurse got chatting to me, and when she discovered where I was from, she then said, "Oh, my daughter went to the schools, and my daughter went to St. Julie's, and then she went into the sixth form at SFX." And she spoke with great gratitude for the way her daughter had been especially pastorally cared for. And apparently she's going to start university, Hope University across the road this autumn. And it was just lovely the way she spoke about the schools and about the care they had for her daughter, and therefore, I know, for all the pupils. So I hope somebody from St Julie's and somebody from SFX is hearing this. It's always good to have that little word of affirmation. And with you and all our schools, the primary schools, Much Wilton and Bishop Eton, going back next week, and all our other schools too. We've got Carlton House, of course, and so on. But I hope that the new term goes well. It's going to be a real challenge for you, and it's going to be a real challenge for all of us as we continue to try and handle all the issues around coronavirus, which haven't gone away, but which seem to be easing a little bit. Please God, they will continue to do so. So there we are. Those are a few thoughts for you. One of the main things that I want to just remind you of, however, this weekend, especially for St Mary's, is to remind you that for the next 3 Sundays, we're having to reserve the 11 o'clock Mass for the First Communions. This Sunday we have 12 children, and therefore their families. We're asking them just to limit the number for each family, including the child, to 6, so that we don't go over the top. And the following 2 Sundays, in fact, there are 15, so it is quite a challenge, but I think we can manage if people are all in their bubbles, and we follow the protocols as we have been doing. And so I ask you to pray for those children. We prayed for them the weekends that they should have been making their First Communion a couple of months ago, and now at last we've been able to give many of them their First Communion. Last week here in Bishop Eton, each day we had an 11 o'clock Mass. They all went beautifully, and we've had a few small groups, 1s and 2s, at St Mary's so far, but we've got quite large numbers for the next 3 Sundays. So I leave you with all those thoughts. Otherwise, the timetable for the Masses continues the same next week. I hope you have a good bank holiday weekend. The forecast for once sounds quite good for the 3 days of the bank holiday. So let's hope this miserable, dreary weather will finally clear, and we'll see the sun again as we go into the autumn. Thank you for joining me today, and may the Lord, as always, reach out and bless you, your homes, your families. Amen.